On a scale of 1 to 10, how acceptable is swearing?
10. You can swear as much as you want. We don't care. Especially if it's to describe ORD, because apparently it's a nemesis of yours. So.
Yes, it is.
I hate that place.
I will save whatever expletives I have for O'Hare.
Let me play the...
You still haven't moved it.
He's still super far. Look, I'm out of frame.
I just want to tell you both good luck. We're all counting on you.
Both good luck. We're 3 people today. N'est-ce pas, Alex?
N'est-ce pas? Indeed, it's a nice and rare treat to have somebody else basically doing the work.
Exactly. Usually I write all these notes down to prepare a show, and you very kindly follow my lead. I mean, my very bad lead. But this time I was like, you know what? It's a day off. It's a summer holiday. It's very European. I didn't have to work because we have a guest. It's a treat for the summer. Just before Alex leaves for his big holiday, so we wanted to have one more episode in the can. Kyle, hello, Kyle. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here with you and fill up some of the air on the podcast. Though you two don't need a whole lot of help, so I could imagine this being 2 hours of me listening, which would be just fine because that's what I do anyway.
No, I think the audience is tired of especially me babbling about all the time. So let's play the music for Genkanai, and we're going to meet off the topic.
Just need to call this the Genkanai theme.
As you can see, Kyle, all is done live.
I love it.
Yeah, we don't do any. Yeah,
there's no post-production. That's our new show.
You used to edit it.
I'm resetting the room for those who will come and maybe discover the show, because Kyle will have talked about it. We are an aviation podcast, but are we? We're more like usually 2 blokes just chatting around for like 2 hours every 5 weeks. And it's all produced live. It's not edited. Of course, when we have a guest, and we will be very kind to Kyle today, if he requires an edit, or if I say something so stupid, I will obviously edit. We're recording today the 6th of July, 2023. Happy 4th, both of you guys. We just had your independence.
Thank you.
Like we had anything to do with it, but it was you're welcome.
However, a note, because they all ask us that this is not going to be live just yet. It'll be live somewhere in July. But of course, I always say that. And then, of course, people, when they listen to it, that's where it goes live. So I don't know why I even bother to say that. So welcome, Kyle. First of all, the reason we have you is it's been a long time in the making, because I think first of all, you've been a listener for a very long time. I remember seeing your name. I think it was mostly on Twitter, interacting with us for a long time, including pre-COVID, when I say long time. And
right.
We had this idea of actually inviting you. And of course, then COVID came through and stopped all our plans for having guests. And then we talked about it again. And it's finally, after all these years, it's coming. And you've been an invaluable resource, actually, in many things, including Delta. And we'll touch upon Delta, of course. And a lot through your work as well. But I'll let you maybe first introduce yourself and let us, and especially let the audience, know who you are.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, this has been a long time coming. But this is a lot of fun to be able to talk with you both, because there are too many podcasts and too few really good ones and fun ones, and people who just love what they're talking about instead of feel some kind of obligation to put out one podcast a month or a week or several a week. So this is a lot of fun.
Thank you.
So I am the executive editor, which is just a fancy sounding title for editor, of a website called Thrifty Traveler, which is a US-based travel and flight deal website. So the company, does a couple of different things. Chiefly, we run a flight deal subscription service. So, you pay us a certain amount of money a year. We send you flight deals directly to your inbox, both, cheap cash fares as well as points and miles deals as well. And then what I do is, I just write stupid words on the internet and on social media, and get to be, a bit of an a-hole while doing so. Especially on social media, but covering the airline industry, really with a North American focus, writing guides about everything from how to find cheap flights and using Google Flights to the inner workings of fairly niche airline mileage programs. It is a lot of fun. I still pinch myself all the time that I've been doing this for almost 5 years now, and just can't imagine a more fun job. Coming from a journalism background to write about something that really delights people like you guys, which again, that's the reason why your podcast is so fun. Why I'm so excited to be talking with you both, is because just the joy that you guys have for travel is so fun, and being even the smallest piece of that in people's lives is just such a privilege.
That's kind.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. You should say because that will, for a lot of people, that will actually put context, your Twitter handle, because I've been mentioning, and Alex has been mentioning it many, many, many times over this show. So as soon as you say it, maybe people will have, oh, of course, now I know this name.
Sure. It's K Potter MN, which I always have to point out now. It's not K Potter Man, which I think people's brains just see the M and the N and they stick an A in there and just have it in their heads. I've gotten that so many times. K Potter MN, as in Minnesota, which is my home state, and the Twitter handle that was available when I signed up for Twitter like a decade and a half ago.
Yeah, there's a new gold rush right now with that new thread, whatever the thing from Instagram. I already put layovers there, lay_overs, because right now I think you can only use the username you have on Instagram. I think, yeah.
Yep, but you gotta lock it in.
Yeah, lock it in just for the podcast, but I don't do anything with it. So, very US-centric. It's good that you say that, because we, especially since COVID, we've been traveling a bit less. Usually I rely on Alex to be our source of US-centric stories. And the fact that you are there is actually good, because it gives us a window into a market that we know Alex knows it much better than I do. However, we haven't been talking about it a lot. We will be talking about it in the next few months, because Alex is going to the US in a few days, actually, for a few weeks. So you will experience some of that. But we're very happy to have you for that, because a lot of the audience actually is based in the US. I know that they love that we talk about other markets, but sometimes we get feedback that we don't talk enough about the US. Well, we are very happy that you're here to do so. What's your home airport?
Minneapolis, St. Paul is my home airport. So I am a Delta hub captive. I don't have much of a choice of which airline I fly, because Delta runs, 70+% of the flights in and out of MSP, which if you had to pick one airline to, have Stockholm syndrome with, Delta is a pretty good one to be stuck with here in the States, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we have BA, Alex.
I think I win.
I think you win too.
Yeah.
I think you win
But
too.
maybe before we go into the nitty-gritty of avgeekery, where does your love of flying or travel or airplanes, and including journalism as well, come from?
The honest answer is I don't really know. It just kind of happened. The major through line I can come up with is, years ago, I think it was probably 2016, my now wife and I, planned, what to that point was really our only big trip abroad, which, took us to Thailand, Vietnam, and then Japan.
Oh, nice.
And, that trip, I was 25, 26. It wasn't like I was, had a life full of travel and always knew that this is something that was going to be a major piece of my life, let alone my career. Not even close. But the process of, obviously taking that trip and going to some amazing places, but also the thrill of the pieces of putting together that trip and all of the flights and the hotels. It's just like a light bulb went off, like if you can have both sides of that, of the joy of planning travel and then also the joy of taking the trip, that's a complete experience. So I think, after that trip, it was just very clear that this was going to be a part of my life and something that I was really focused on. In the past, it was soccer or football, excuse me. I'm so sorry. And golf and music. This has been now, basically a decade-long love affair of travel that I've really committed my life and my work to. It really does, I think, kind of tie back to that trip at the start of it.
From the vintage point of people that are slightly older than you, this is a virus that will never leave you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stuck with me forever. I understand that. And all of my money and my free time is out the window now. It's banked in my, mental checkbook that's where that's going, and that's fine. In terms of things to devote your life to, that's a pretty darn good one.
There's worse.
Yeah, there's absolutely worse. So maybe To start with a few topics that I wanted to talk to you about. Maybe the first one, because you mentioned a Thrifty Traveler. Do you want to mention the website? It's thriftytraveler.com. Is that correct?
Thriftytraveler.com. You nailed it.
One of the things that I always noted through your Twitter account, and of course through the website as well, is you talk a lot about cheap travel, which we are sometimes guilty, Alex and I, of not doing, because we talk about the pointy end of the aircraft because these are the memorable experiences and we have a lot of miles. But most of the people on this planet do not travel on the pointy end, travel either low cost or seek like very cheap travel. Because maybe some of them also maybe don't really value the travel as much as the destination. They want to go somewhere and might not actually really value how they get there, besides going by plane because they don't want to take too much time. Do you? I mean, we've seen since post-COVID. I don't know how to describe that because everybody talks post-COVID, but we don't really know when post-COVID started. We've all seen an inflation in pricing all around the globe. I have, of course, I've mentioned some numbers, but they were mostly international. So from the US to Europe, from Europe to Asia, Asia is really, really going super expensive right now from all over the world if you want to go to Asia, or in Japan in particular. What's your view? How have you seen that inflation going on in the US? And maybe, is it still possible to travel cheaply?
It is, because, inflation is really tough because it's undeniable. You see it in almost everything. But whether it's the grocery store or airfare, inflation is not a monolith. There are these big picture numbers that are raising the cost of, basically everything that we do, including being able to get on a plane, whether you're at the back of the bus or at the front in the pointy end. But those are made up of millions upon millions of airfares, and not all of them are up, 15, 30, 40% year over year. Some of them are down. So, I have the benefit of working with people who are much smarter than me, who look at these individual airfares every single day, 24/7, 365, basically. And so within the undeniable trend that airfare is up, there are some, I would say micro trends where airfare is down, or at least, considerably more affordable. The big one right now is that, within the US, this time a year ago, domestic airfare was nuts. I mean, flights that used to cost, $200 or less round trip were in the $500 or $600s because there were still international travel restrictions.
Yeah.
Up until, about this time, both for entering places in Europe as well as, obviously elsewhere in Asia, but also for getting back into the United States, because up until, June of 2022, you needed a negative COVID test in order to re-enter the United States after going to any country abroad, which meant that people were not comfortable planning those big trips to Europe and Asia and South America or wherever. So domestic travel was going gangbusters this time last year. The demand for travel outpaced the supply and airfare went through the roof. Fast forward to present day, and man, you guys are going to get clobbered by Americans this summer if you're not already. I mean,
we are.
The amount of people that are, go anywhere, go on Twitter, go on Instagram. Everybody is in Portugal, in London, in Paris. Pick a spot. It's going to be crowded, and it's going to be more crowded probably than ever with American tourists. And, the inverse is true this year. Domestic airfare has fallen, and it continues falling. And, one of the most interesting trends for me is that, like clockwork, 1.5 to 2 months out, before departure for a domestic flight, we continue to see prices fall because airlines were too bullish on domestic travel demand, priced a little too high. And what do you do when you need to fill some seats? You cut airfare. So that really is one of the big stories that we're seeing here in the States, price-wise. And again, the inverse is true for international travel. Those trips to Europe from here in the States, especially over the summer, those seats are gone. Airline executives said months ago that they were, 80-85% load factors transatlantic heading into the summer. And there's just not enough. There's not enough capacity in order to sell those cheap fares to Europe over the summer.
Are you flying domestically in the US, Alex, this summer?
Sort of. I think if you count Hawaii to California as domestics, yeah, I am. I'm doing an intra-island flight. I'm doing Honolulu to Lihue, and then I'm doing Lihue to San Jose in California. So, and actually, what you just said, Kyle, I could see in those fares, they weren't eye-watering. And it's interesting because my wife and I had done the same legs a couple of years before, and it was half the price it is. We paid this year half the price we paid during COVID. So I can absolutely see that. And what are we? Let's see. And it would have been around the same booking window that you just described, 1.5 to 2 months out. And I was seeing very appealing, not too painful fares available on most dates that I wanted to fly. And I looked at a bunch of different routes to see if there was, anything a little bit cheaper, but no, it wasn't. It's absolutely supporting what you said. Not that you're lying or making it up, but we have the data to prove it.
Little do you know,
Alex, you're the data.
Yeah.
No, so Alex, where are you going? Or sorry, what airline are you flying within Hawaii inter-island?
Hawaiian, and I was disappointed. I mean, I've got no issue with them, but I was disappointed because it's not an area I know well, and I glance at that market maybe once every year or so, and I think since I gave it any deal of scrutiny, there's been massive consolidation in carrier in Hawaii. There used to be all of these little carriers that were intra-island or, even across to the mainland, but now they're all gone. So I was kind of bummed that I wasn't going to be even have the opportunity to fly a new airliner or a new aircraft. So yeah, Hawaiian seemed to be the only game in town at the moment, other than sort of Southwest on some routes in inter-island.
It's funny you mentioned that, because there's also a awesome trend within the islands, because Southwest is really the second game in town aside from Hawaiian. And Southwest, unlike Hawaiian and almost every other airline, doesn't sell flights 11 plus months in advance. They load their schedule in basically up to 7-month chunks. So if you're looking more than 7 months out, you're probably going to see inter-island airfare for $149 one way, let's say, because Hawaiian Airlines has a monopoly at that moment. But as soon as Southwest loads its schedule that far out again, like clockwork, Southwest will load like a $59, $69 fare, and Hawaiian will match every single time.
I kind of love Southwest for doing that, but at the same time, it was interesting to see that there was very little difference in fares, even across the Pacific from Hawaii to the West Coast. Everybody was within $25 to $50 of each other. And then, of course, you're layering on the ancillaries, where, again, Southwest wins because you get your bags for free. But there was not a whole lot of movement there, which suggests to me, with my very amateur viewpoint, that there was a reasonable amount of capacity available if no one is really going large on price differentiation.
Who are you flying with to Hawaii? Like on the way, I know from Hawaii to California. Who are you flying with?
From Hawaii to California, Southwest.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and again, Southwest, Alaska, United, they were all within $50 of each other. And I picked Southwest, like I said, for the bags, and also just the timing worked out. I got a little bit longer in Hawaii with that schedule, but other than that, very little. This kind of goes down to the whole thing Paul and I we've been talking about for the last 6 months. Like, Alaska are now a One World partner, One World member, so I could have parlayed my meager silver status on BA into something, but it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it in the end. It wasn't worth kind of faffing around and going to the wrong airport and at the wrong time and all of that. So because all of the prices across all the carriers were within a few bucks of each other in the big scheme of things.
And so many people have lost their status. I think I read a number the other day. I think in the US is across everything. So that includes, I think, hotels. And there might be some people counted twice if they were on multiple programs. But I think it was 25 million people. Something like that lost status. It doesn't mean they lost entirely the status. They might have been downgraded.
A tier.
But that's a new game from some airlines because I I'm just at the fence, I've let go, but not still, because of course BA renewed me and Emirates renewed me for gold twice. I'm like, yeah, Alex is shaking his head because he hasn't been renewed on BA. For some reason, I was not getting the points. They renewed me, as a gift for me. But the point is, if you haven't, and even if I have, some of the trips I'm taking later this year, including to the US and within the US, actually, I might actually fly Delta in the US. Because the leg at some point, that was a good price, and I like the product that they offer. And I said, do I really want to go American just because I'm on One World? I'm not sure. So does that matter, you think, in the pricing of flights, Kyle?
Yes and no. It moves the needle in all the wrong ways for most people, right? That hamster wheel that we're all on, and I'm on it too, so I can't speak all high and mighty about it. But it leads people to make some really poor decisions about what they want to do in the name of, in many times really questionable benefits.
We have made plenty with Alex because of that.
Oh, fuck.
We've all done it, right? We've all done that stupid mileage run at the end of the year because we needed another 3,000 miles to hit that next tier or requalify. And then we forget about the fact that throughout the course of the following year, we really didn't get anything out of that, extra however many dollars we spent in order to do that, or that however many dollars we spent throughout the course of the entire year prior just to get within striking distance. But then we keep doing it because we tell ourselves it's really fun and worth it and cool.
I think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot of Stockholm syndrome, that phrase again, with these systems. And it took me really sitting down with myself and going, now look, is it worth getting punched in the face by BA on a regular basis to then have the privilege of getting punched in the face by BA next year? And I don't think I was going to realize what I was losing or maybe gaining until I lost the status. And it's been really interesting to go through the same airport experience, flight experience that I've been doing for years and years and years, but one status down. And on Monday, it will be my first time with checked bags and kids in tow. So that's going to be interesting as well. But so far, I haven't had a sense of regret at all. And it's allowed me to experience some of these other airlines that I had intellectually known were a better choice for a particular flight, but my quote unquote loyalty to BA or One World at least has prevented me from experiencing to the fullest.
I think that's an experience that a lot of people need. And because the answer may well be for Paul that getting, bumped down to that lower level is just not acceptable, that the benefits are worth the cost.
I'm that precious, of course.
Exactly. They're not going to punch you in the face, Paul. They punch Alex in the face.
Mm-hmm. Regularly.
But I think people need to give them a chance to see what they're losing before they can actually do the real mental inventory to decide whether it's worth doing it again, stretching the next year in order to hit that tier of status again. The airlines are too good at keeping people on the hamster wheel and spending money that maybe they shouldn't be.
Yeah, it's funny because just before, and we've been talking about that in this podcast, in 2019, a lot of the airlines, including Delta, were talking about it's the end of the alliances. We don't need alliances anymore because our customers are so loyal to us anyway. And then, of course, boom, bada boom, COVID happens. And now the alliances actually still become, again, very relevant, especially, of course, for international travel, because that's how you're going to keep them. Has Delta changed its stance on that? Or
yes and no. I think Delta is a little bit different because they're certainly not the only airline that is pursuing both joint ventures and also taking minority stakes in their joint venture partner airlines. But they have done a lot more of that than I think any other, major global airline, which at the start of the pandemic looked like the worst gamble of all time, because all of a sudden they've sunk costs not only into their own airline, but about 5 others, that money that they were not going to get back. But now, looking back, more than 3 years at this point, I think that it's probably going to wind up being a pretty shrewd investment because they get to call the shots with LATAM and with Air France KLM, with Korean Air, with Virgin Atlantic, in terms of, where those airlines fly and how they can help each other in a way that you can't really even do to the same extent with a joint venture, let alone as part of, the SkyTeam Alliance. Yeah. So in a way, I think, the Alliance for Delta in particular just plays a much smaller role than those big investments that they've made in those other, airlines across the country.
You could actually compare that to Qatar, because Qatar Airways, with probably, of course, another big purse, they're investing in Africa, they're investing in India, they're investing in Heathrow, they own one world in a way. So they can manipulate. I don't want to sound, that's not the right word, because that sounds like a cunning plan, but they can manipulate the alliance towards their own goals. So yeah, similar. Yeah. But what's your view? Because you put out a tweet that I loved. It was a few months ago. You said something. There's a reason. I'll start with that. There's a reason on this podcast we don't talk about miles a lot. First, because it's not as attractive in Europe that it is in the US. I'll talk about that maybe a bit further down this show. But because it sounds, and you use that word, I'm going to quote you because I found a tweet again for this podcast. You said,
"Oh no, most conversations that start with that don't go well." I found that tweet of yours.
I dug this up. Yeah, hope you weren't planning on running for Congress.
No. It's a good one. I loved it. No, not knowing you, when I read that, finally someone says it. I honestly think most points and miles sites and social media accounts come across as hawking and MLM multi-level marketing scam to most people. And honestly, sometimes it's true. I'm an old-fashioned guy, so I follow a lot of blogs via RSS. And I had to unfollow some of these blogs because it felt that the whole time they were not talking about the review or the quality of the seat or whether it was a fun trip, but they were just trying to tell me that I need to go there because they had, of course, affiliate marketing links first, and then also wanted to get more miles from themselves. It felt, and if you're like a normal traveler, for someone who doesn't know or understand how miles work, it feels exactly like that, an MLM to me. Not the miles program. I'm talking about the way all the ancillaries or the ecosystem, if you want, the people that try to tell you how to use them sound. And I think Alex agrees.
100%.
There's just a really perverse incentive system, which I think is probably at the core of this. And look, I'm not innocent in this. Thrifty Traveler writes about, points and miles and earning miles through credit cards and has affiliate links to earn money when people apply for those. I'm a part of the problem too. So let me be clear that I'm not wholly innocent in this. But, that financial incentive is a huge piece of it. And in convincing people that this is worth caring about and you should open credit card X, Y, and Z has a direct financial through line to everybody that's writing about these things. The issue for me is that if you're trying to connect with new people to show them that these things are worth caring about, then you need to speak to them in a way that connects with where they're at, which is not, I know how to utilize 12 different airline mileage programs to book a flight from Minneapolis to London at the cheapest possible rate flying business class. It's, I have 10,000 Delta Sky miles and I don't know what to do with them. That's where kind of the core consumer for most sites, and honestly, including my own, is at. So how do you connect with people in a way and be honest with them about what's realistic and get them, if your goal is to show them how to do these things that you say are so cool and you're making money on because people are applying for credit cards, how do you make that a reality for them and help them understand how it is in fact possible? And if that's not your goal, then what are we doing here? The point when you write about these things with anything, if you're on a podcast, if you're writing a website about travel, whatever, is to educate people. And if you're doing it in the vein of travel, it's to help people travel more for less and maybe travel more comfortably for less. But there's a big gap in knowledge between most of the people who are writing about it and their readership. That is honestly, I think a huge opportunity to help more people.
I think that's fantastic. I think the way that you frame that is exactly the kind of thing. Because being completely honest, it's not a world I fully understand at all. It's complicated, and I think it's also obfuscated by that layer of content creators that Paul was alluding to. So you just get this fog of shilling that obscures the value that you're describing. And it's interesting because I've seen a lot of questions posed exactly how you phrased it, which is especially around the Amex points. You know, I've got this many and what should I do with them? And you get all these great answers, and they're contextualizing it like this. Let me explain to you why this is valuable in terms of either hard dollars or in how much it would cost to acquire the same experience with cash. And to me, for someone like me who doesn't know, you know, is 100,000, you know, Delta miles or United or whatever, is that a lot or a little? I don't know. But if you're giving me a frame of reference exactly like you described, I can immediately see, oh wait, this is why I should be doing this. This is why I should care, as opposed to just banking them and watching them expire and probably pissing them away inefficiently on an upgrade or a redemption that I could have done in a much more efficient manner. So that's a really interesting insight.
And you know, the other piece of this that's on the one hand really, really frustrating to me, and on the other that I'm really proud of the way that we go about things on our site, is that people talk about credit and credit cards like it's a plaything.
Oh yeah.
Credit card debt literally ruins lives. Credit card debt is, you know, arguably the single biggest financial problem in the United States. And, you know, the same could probably be said of many countries around the world. So every time we write about, you know, the new biggest bonus on a credit card that will earn you those 100,000 Amex points, Alex, we say something along the lines of credit cards are serious business, and that you cannot and should not open a credit card and make charges in the name of earning points if you cannot afford to pay off every single cent in full on time every month. Because whatever you are earning in points is going to be drastically outweighed by whatever interest you're going to pay on those mounting credit card bills. That is not enough. There's a lot more to be done in terms of, again, meeting people where they're at, which increasingly for a lot of travel sites and especially social media influencers is people who are really young and might be looking to get their first ever credit card. But at least it's something.
Yeah.
I will do a parenthesis. I'm going to try to be short because I think this is something that many people do not understand, why there's such a difference between the US and other markets, is the fees, basically. So when you get a credit card, you get it from a card scheme. So it could be, I might do some shortcuts to go faster because otherwise we'll go forever. So the card scheme, Visa, American Express, MasterCard, etc. And then when you pay for something at point of sale, so, you know, the little machines in the US, you still have to put your signature or Apple Pay, whichever. Then the bank of that business, you know, so there's a fee between the point of sale to the bank of that business. There's a further fee between the bank of that business and the card scheme. And then, of course, there's another between the card scheme and the bank that issued the card, right? And the last one is what is called interchange fees. They are in the EU. They are actually by law. They are locked at, if I remember correctly, 0.5 or 0.4 for credit cards and 0.2 or something like that for debit cards. In the US, it's one of the highest in the world. We go like 2 and up, depending. You know, you have these vanity cards that are super expensive. Of course, and that's money, because that's where all these cards and the Visas, the MasterCards, the American Express, the Chase, all these guys can play with, because the more fee you've got, the more you can create marketing schemes around, you know, points and rewards and affiliates and affiliations with other partners, and et cetera, which, because by law, to protect the consumer, it's not possible in Europe and in many other countries, is why there's less to play with, and also why for us it's less interesting to simply do it. Not that it's not, because Alex mentioned I also have an American Express, I also have reward points that I can use. I'm not saying they don't exist, but it's very, very big in the US, and probably also the culture of credit cards in the US, where it's easier to get like 5 credit cards, whereas in Europe, if you try to get 2 or 3 at some point, you get a hit on your credit score, or you will be limited by issuing banks to do so. The UK, now that I need to mention, the UK has left, of course, the EU, so it's not part of this law anymore. So it will, I think, or it has already, I'm not sure, see how much I know, raise that interchange fee to 1.3, if my memory is correct, which means maybe in the UK we'll have a little bit more to play if that's something that you want to do, and have a little bit more rewards with credit cards. And final point, because I've lived in Japan. Japan has very, very high fees. However, Japan is a very, very different market in terms of dynamics. The reason being, people were very resistant to credit cards. They're very hard to acquire. I mean, they were very hard to acquire. And most people got used to loyalty cards. I mean, if you've ever been to Japan, every Yodobashi camera, you get your points. You literally, our hotel, you get your points. You always get points. And people have gotten used to use points, because also businesses can then retain the customers only for them. They don't have to share it with a credit card system. So even though Japan has also very high interchange fees, they do not have the same play, because you use the term play, with credit cards and rewards, including air miles. I think that's a very important distinction. This is why the US, and probably Canada, I guess, probably is the same than the US, because I want to put them together, have all these websites, all this ecosystem about people talking about it, because the ability to do so. And probably if I were living in the US, and Alex was living in the US, I would use that more to my benefit. But to your final point, I think the most important thing is that, like you say, these cards, and the fact that the fees are high, and they're getting higher on these, again, I call them vanity cards, but they're, meaning like these very exclusive cards. It's a toll on the lower end of consumers. So people who don't earn that much money, the poorest of the people that have to use credit cards, because often that's how they fund their daily life. We're not talking about air travel here. Of course, they have to pay these higher fees. So I had heard that the US wanted to stop this increase. They wanted to also cap these fees. Of course, there's probably massive resistance from a lot of players and a massive lobbying in Congress to avoid that. But meaning that's why, and I think I've done enough of that, that's why we don't have the same play, and here it's a bad word, the same play with credit cards that you guys do.
Yeah, I think you spelled it out well. And I would also just add that, that's also the reason why, at least traditionally, Amex isn't accepted as widely as Visa and MasterCard and other, the big credit card companies, because those interchange fees, traditionally anyway, for American Express were quite a bit higher than some of the other credit card issuing companies. So retailers just didn't want to pay to accept them. So no Amex allowed. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think Visa and MasterCard in the US account for 75% of the market. Even though on websites for air travel, we keep hearing about Chase, Sapphire, stuff that doesn't exist here. Chase does exist in the UK, but not the cards you have. So because these cards yield way more in terms of fees, thus yields way more in terms of reward, thus you can have access in like these joining bonuses. Like sometimes for me, I'm eye-watering. I'm like, what? I could get like 150,000 just by joining a credit card scheme. If I can my Amex Plat, I might have gotten what? Well, how much did you get, Alex, when you joined Amex? You remember?
It was like
maybe 40,000.
It was like 100,000.
Oh my God, I didn't have that. I didn't sign up at the right moment.
Yeah, but I mean, to Kyle's point, there was a spend threshold that had to be achieved in a certain period of time, which, I had signed up for the card knowing that I would have hit that anyway because of the way that I use. It's a charge card. But I did the math and I worked out like, okay, well, I'm going to be doing that anyway, so this sounds great. But I think it's borderline predatory in the way that they're dangled in front of you, like, and I think if you match that with this is what you could get for that amount of miles, it becomes worrisome.
Yeah, and I think, and that's why as well we've talked about that, and maybe that's we can move on with that. The loyalty programs for airline are so valuable in the US. Like sometimes they even they are more valuable than the airline itself, right? And during COVID, since you mentioned COVID and Delta strategy, I remember that United actually used its loyalty program to go in debt, so basically to acquire debt to save the airline. I think they went on a loan of $5-6 billion of loan by putting the loyalty program as collateral. AAG, so BA, Iberia, etc., did the same in Europe, but for a much smaller amount. Sorry, probably $500,000 or something. No, $500 million, so 500 million, which is already big, right? Which also kind of helped save the company, but which shows even though IAG's loyalty program is highly valued, it's nowhere as near the value of the programs in the US, which are crazy. There was even like rumors at some point that airline wanted to spin them out, but in my head, I'm like, okay, if you spin them out, then what about the airline? How do you make money?
They're the economic engine of these airlines. I think in particular in the United States, some of these airlines would be in the red every single year, if not for these frequent flyer programs, because they're, in particular, their relationship with the credit card issuing banks. So, Delta partners with American Express. Delta sells a boatload of miles to American Express every year, which they take and package into those big eye-popping, 100,000 SkyMile bonuses a couple of times a year to convince people to join American Express. They, those Delta flyers are swiping those Delta credit cards, and then every year, like clockwork, American Express hands over $6+ billion to Delta in exchange for that relationship. And, Delta is not making, a $6 billion profit every year. They certainly won't this year, probably not even close. And, that same trend plays out with all of the major carriers here in the United States. They have become banks that happen to own planes also and fly a lot of people every single day.
It's interesting because you can think of them, in a slightly trivial manner, that they're just this made up currency, that there are points and they're meaningless and they have no value. But if you think about the earned points or miles or whatever you want to call them are a liability on an airline's balance sheet. They're outstanding value that the airline does not have control over until they're redeemed.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. The revenue gets deferred until the point is redeemed. So that's why IAG, I think, when it was American Express, they went and said we're going to do a deal for, I think it was 500 million, but I could be wrong, because that suddenly saved the balance sheet.
Yeah.
It's really a world of it on it. So this is why I wanted to talk about it a little bit today, because we have someone who knows about this, understands this. Because otherwise it can be a bit dry to talk about it. But it's quite staggering to think about the economics, especially compared to how much money sometimes the airline without the loyalty program does. It's just
well, and the funny thing is that we're all kind of paying the price now. You don't need to go back too far in the headlines of sites like ours to see words devaluation. United has done it. Delta, it's just a given now. Emirates, I mean, you go across the line, all of these frequent flyer programs are retooling their award charts and raising award rates for just how many miles you need to book. Basically, any flight from anywhere point A to point Z. And a big piece of that is exactly what Alex mentioned, which is that these are liabilities on their balance sheets, those unused miles, and those balances have grown a lot in the last 3 years. For two reasons. One is that even though people weren't redeeming miles, people were still swiping those credit cards to earn more miles. So the balances just kept growing. But the bigger piece of it is that all of these banks, for most of the last 3 years, in order to lure in new customers who otherwise weren't interested in travel because travel didn't really seem possible, the only way to do that was to go even bigger. So, what used to be a 60,000 point bonus on the American Express Platinum card, which is what I got it at in 2018, which I look like an idiot now because 150,000 is like the minimum now. So it's more than doubled. And, that same trend really does, with few exceptions, play out, any airline, any bank that we're talking about. I mean, they set new records during the pandemic for just how much they were giving away. But then at some point, the bill comes due. There's just too much of that currency floating around somewhere, and there's only one thing to do. It's inflation for airline points.
Yeah.
Wow. I hadn't realized that was the cause. I hadn't realized because again, like Paul and I don't look at the U.S. market with the level of scrutiny that you do, but even, maybe every 6 months we look at it and go, oh, the blogosphere is blowing up because, American have devalued their points. And so we go and look at it, but I had not realized that it was orders of magnitude in devaluation over the last few years.
How do you feel about the devaluation of SkyMiles then, Kyle? Come on. Since you're a Delta fan, so how did you feel when it was announced? Did you get into withdrawal symptoms? Like, oh my God, what did I do? I should have spent them before.
This is a 4-hour-long podcast, right? So I've got plenty of time. No, look, I mean, Delta in particular, the writing has been on the wall forever that there's nowhere to go but down. So I think, for people like me, and let's be clear, I'm not a normal person. Like, I spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about and especially writing about these things. There are choices that you can make to protect yourself from the inevitable, which is, don't focus on earning Delta SkyMiles. You still fly that airline because, first and foremost, it's really my only option most of the time. But also because they're a good airline. And, I think especially in the case of Delta, you fly Delta because you want to, not because you're earning those points to use later. That's just a bonus that you may or may not put to use later.
Yeah, that's a good way of seeing it, actually. I fully agree.
But a lot of people don't make that connection. For most people, again, it goes back to meeting people where they're at and where their level of understanding is as they come to you, whether you're talking to them or, they're reading your words. And for most people, that point is, I want to fly Delta, so therefore I earn Delta SkyMiles, or I want to fly American, therefore I earn American Advantage miles. And so kind of leading people through this needlessly complicated web of, how you redeem miles for the most value and the choices that you can make to earn points that will serve you better, even if your goal is exactly the same, in order to fly Delta. That is a difficult one for a lot of people. You can't really tell people stop earning Delta SkyMiles because the immediate thing is, well, I only fly Delta. But just letting people know that there might be a better way, or that, their own best interest might be better served by just not worrying about it. Just taking the best deal wherever you can, and whatever you get from it in points down the road is just a bonus.
It's a good way of thinking about it. I should have talked to you like 10 years ago.
So is the implication then that if you're accruing miles through a credit card, then a plan like Amex might actually be the best option, because then you can transfer them to the various programs as and when those deals, quote unquote deals, become available? And frankly, the intel is much more valuable to you than at that point, right? Because you're not just looking for a specific carrier's redemption off deals that you guys would highlight, but across the spectrum.
Exactly. I mean, it really is as simple as don't put all your eggs in one basket. And the problem is that most people just care about one basket. Mm-hmm. So showing people that there are a couple of different baskets and there are a couple of different ways to earn eggs, and then you get to pick and choose which ones you put them in when the time is right. Exactly as you said, when the deal comes up, when Delta decides, we're done charging 500,000 miles for a business class seat to London, we'll do it for 120,000 miles.
500,000.
That's pretty normal. It's but then again,
the miles, the points don't mean anything because each program has its own scale. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And I suppose that at that point, then the hard part becomes decoupling points with status, because your loyalty is going to earn you status, which was going to get you some bonuses or some benefits, maybe one of which is faster accrual of those miles, those multipliers that a lot of the airlines. So I guess it's then a kind of it's a cognitive exercise to decouple earning and status. And can you even do that? I think maybe you can. Maybe there's, your earning status if you fly enough on multiple airlines, as long as you're not thinking too much about where that status is coming from.
We're coming full circle here to just how successful airlines are at keeping people on the hamster wheel, which just absolutely removes the ability for a lot of people, understandably, to think critically about something like opportunity cost, which is, let's just say you're going to spend $25,000. Should you spend that all with Delta? Spend it on your Delta credit card. That helps you earn the status that you love and that you believe that you absolutely need. But what's the opportunity cost of that $25,000 when that could be spent, again, on, a credit card that earns flexible points, which might not earn you, that Delta status that you know and love and feels comfortable like a blanket. But, that same amount of spend on a different credit card could help you get the things that you actually care about more when you think about it, which is, a more reasonable flight that you can book using points that you earn more of even faster, if you just forget a little bit about Delta.
I love that you mentioned Delta only. I'd rather forget about United. No. Have you flown United in the past week? No, you couldn't anyway.
Burn.
Sorry. Now, we have you know what? We have the unions of, I think it's cabins, the crews listening to this podcast. So every time I do a little jab, I need to apologize to them.
Send a proactive message. Sorry. Trigger warning.
Yeah, that is a very good way to put it. I mean, it's true that I'm starting to realize that actually I was traveling very well with that status more than 15 years ago. And I got into the, how you call it, the hamster wheel, like, believing strongly like a god that I absolutely need the gold or the platinum or whatever, because if I don't, I'm not an important person, or I might lose something. And actually, you don't really lose a lot, which I should have realized when, especially short haul, when I fly in Europe, it's EasyJet. It's basically the same experience. And I can also get a fast track. Most now airports, you can even buy it, which always say to me is fast track first. And in lounges, I mean, it's nice to have, but fast track and faster boarding is always what I want. And actually, you can get it in other ways, but in your head, maybe airlines have been so good at putting in your head that it's absolutely, you need to do that. Though in the US, maybe you have 35 groups ahead of you anyway. So do you think, by the way, these groups thing, because a lot of it is due to credit cards and trying to segment even more people in groups. Do you think that is a trend that will go on, or at some point airlines will have to say, look, we cannot have like 85 groups trying to board just because it becomes too complex and too a hassle for the ground staff to actually do?
I don't know that there's a way to put the genie back in the bottle. I think a lot of the things that we're talking about is really structured around, in some way, eliminating decision making for why people are doing the things that they're doing and turning it into an impulse or a reflex. And all of these things add up. The earlier boarding group, the fast track, the miles, the very occasional upgrade, you name it. All of these things,
very occasional,
right? All of these things add up to a point where people don't do that critical decision making and evaluation. So I would be really, really interested to hear from Alex in a couple of months, especially after his trip through the States, about what that looks like, because I think that's what you need in order to do it, which is that, that period in the wilderness where you don't have that same level of status to really think about what it means to go without it.
Yeah, I'm also interested to see how I feel because as I've gone through, and I've really only done short haul since I lost status with BA, I can't see where I'm missing out at the moment. And I think in many instances, it boils down to exactly what Paul said. It's the fast track boarding in many, and that's, I only care about that if I've got an overhead, a bag that needs to go in the overhead. Although other than that, I don't care.
Yeah, and for short haul, actually, because long haul, you know you're going to have a bag on the overhead. Usually there's enough room. It's usually the short haul.
Yeah, so long haul, I don't.
A321s in minus.
Yeah, I mean, the Amex gets you access to lounges, and they may not be as good, or they may be exponentially better than what the airline is offering. It depends on the airline and the airport, but it will be interesting to fly on. My entire trip, I'm doing 5 or 6, 7 flights, and I only have status on one of the flights. The rest, I am freeballing it, as they say. So it'll be very interesting to see. They don't say that.
You guys tune in, and one of the next podcasts will be probably in August with Alex. Will talk for 2 hours.
Yeah,
about every single thing he's done from the US to Japan and back, and Hawaii and everything. And I know the route. I know the airlines. Wow, there's a lot of interesting stuff coming up. But it's true, Carl. I think it's very emotional at the end of the day. Loyalty is emotional, but it's very emotional. And you mentioned, made me laugh, this, very occasional upgrades. I think Emirates is a very good example with me. I was upgraded a lot in the beginning. We're talking like a long time ago, and I was not living in London, which meant that for that market, departing market, I was more important as a customer than I am in London in the middle of the pack. But even saying that, I'm already past rationalizing their decision making, because by the time I had moved to London, I was already gold. So I was already bought in, and you can feel that there's a lag between the reality. I mean, Emirates is still very good, but the reality of having had upgrades and having had these little carrots in front of you that they haven't really done in the past 10 years, but I'm still with Emirates and still like flying with them, but I still kind of carry with me it's like an X, and you always only remember the good times, and I'm not comparing Emirates to an X, really. This very bad analogy, but you know what I mean. We tend to idealize our emotions, and we want to probably bury some of them that hurt. Again, Emirates didn't hurt me, nor an X, by the way. I want to make that clear on the podcast, on the record. But, so I think it's very emotional. And airlines know that, like in every brand, they know that. Every brand, like Apple knows that as well. Other powerful brand understand it. But because travel is emotional already, because you're going somewhere on a journey. Of course, it can be business as well, but it plays a lot into that. But don't you think that the fact that so many people are losing their status, again, 20 plus million in the US, a shit ton as well in the UK, in Europe, and probably in Asia as well. I haven't looked at numbers, and probably airlines. I mean, IAG on their latest report for the first time did put the loyalty as a separate entity, so you could see some of the numbers, and they clearly lost people. Basically, they lost Alex, right? People that got downgraded. Don't you think that this allows for a little bit of a reset? Not for everyone, but some people might just take the opportunity to try other stuff.
I hope it does. There may be a lot of people out there, including, your listeners, who come to the same conclusion that, no, it is worth working for, that the benefit is worth the work, and I'm going to do it again the next time I get the chance to. And that's great. This is not saying that nobody should earn status, and status is all garbage for every person at every time.
No, of course not.
You got to do the math. I mean, that's how we could talk about this stuff for hours, and almost every single answer, the only capital T true thing that I could say is you just need to do the math. It's booking flights, using points, booking packaged vacation deals where your hotel and airfare is bundled together. You got to do the math. That's it. But the same is true of status, and like we've been talking about, the ability that these airlines have to kind of take hold emotionally over our decision making and force us in a weird, perverse way that we don't do with many other things, aside from maybe an ex or a current spouse, to make justifications and excuses and see things in the best possible light of, oh, well, maybe next year I'll get a lot more upgrades because those 20 million people are losing their status. That might be true. But you got to do the math.
Yeah, BA never upgraded me. So see, I don't even have the. Are you more the hoarder type or the user? Meaning, do you keep your miles for like a big trip you really looking forward to? Like I've read. I think it was somewhere on your Twitter. I think you're going to a big trip down under next year. I think Australia and New Zealand. I think is if I'm not mistaken. Is that so? Do you like lock in and say, look, I'm going to get miles and I'm going to get organized in a way to being able to have a fun trip far, maybe in a comfortable way as well? Or are you more like all the time, oh, this little flight I could get more comfortable, I could get for free, et cetera, et cetera? What types are you? What type are you?
You know, a little bit of both. I mean, the biggest thing is just they're not an investment. So whether you use it for that little thing or a big thing, you just have to use them because we've talked about all of the devaluations that have happened. It's constant. It's not going to stop. So that means these things are not getting more valuable. That said, my wife and I tend to plan 2, if not 3 really big trips a year. So it's not like I feel that pressure to constantly use them for that little thing because odds are, there's going to be that big thing like going to Australia and New Zealand next year to put them towards. So, and then you get to a point where what your travel goals are, what, points or the amount of cash that you need in order to meet them are. And then it just kind of becomes a constant cycle of being able to do what you want for less or do it more comfortably for less. That's the fun part.
So are you going to Australia? Which airline are you using?
So we are flying. We're actually making a stopover in Tahiti first. So we're going to go to Bora Bora for 4 nights.
Nice.
So flying Air Tahiti Nui there. And then onward to Auckland. Got a lot of additional smaller pieces to fit into that puzzle. But then flying Delta One back from Sydney to LA.
Nice.
Oh, that's a long one.
So what's your process then? Like, how do you go? Like, if you've said, okay, we're going to go and do this big trip and we've got a destination in mind, what is your process for, and forgive me, Paul, if you were going to get to this eventually, but, I'm just interested, like, how do you look at a redemption chart and go, that's good value, that's not good value? Or are you basing your destination choice on point redemption value, or are you doing it the other way around?
And before you answer, for context, Alex has been organizing this summer trip for the past 4 months.
Dude.
I think his brain is full of trying to find
I'm so done with it.
That's why he's asking you.
I'm sure I've done it wrong too.
That's a tough one. Typically, what I tell a lot of people, and honestly, what still basically holds true for me to this day, is to set a goal and work backwards. So the goal at its broadest point is Australia. It's something that my wife and I have been talking about for years. Part of that goal, to kind of niche down, is to do it comfortably. So flying Delta One, let's just say.
Nice.
And then to niche down again, working backward from the goal, is to figure out the best way to make that happen for the least amount of points possible, which is the tough part. Like, I could sit here and tell you about, probably 4 or 5 different ways to book that flight. I would also need to go look at my own website at things I may have written as recently as 2 months ago because I've forgotten them. But a lot of it really just comes down to knowing what you want to do, and then knowing the right questions to ask either of yourself or other resources to be able to figure out how to make that a reality. But for me, it really always starts with the destination because, look, we'll probably talk a lot about like some of the coolest flights we've taken later in this podcast. And that is great. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not above being really snobby and doing cool things and thinking that it's really sweet. But at the end of the day, the point is not just to sit in an airplane seat for 15 hours, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
It's to go do new things.
I mean, it kind of is.
All right. So that's a piece of it. I will grant you that. But
no, fair.
It's still a means to an end.
Oh,
and the end goal is, to be in Australia, a country that my wife and I have never been to. Same goes for New Zealand. And to do cool new things and see new places and meet new people and talk with them and learn about each other and ourselves. And the best part is that, being able to do that in a really cool lie flat business seat is very cool on its own, but then also makes the rest of that process a little bit easier too.
I will just point out, I'm not going to spoil it. I'll tell you after we end the podcast, that even though Alex just quipped that it's part of the deal, the way he's going to go to Japan is interesting. I'm just going to say that, guys. It's going to be for you the next podcast, and I will learn which airline he's using at the end of this show. So keep the suspense. So, but maybe because you mentioned Delta One, and you've mentioned, I mean, you're okay with Stockholm syndrome, but it's not really bad to be Delta. Tell us what you love about Delta, because we have a lot of Delta fans. Every time I criticize or Alex criticizes Delta, which we don't really do because we don't really travel with them. I used to be a SkyTeam Platinum, but that's a long time ago now. So I used to travel with them in Asia and the US a lot, not anymore. Why does it stand out? Or maybe you're going to tell me they don't. Why does it stand out for you?
You know, in some ways it doesn't. Air travel is so commoditized now. In a good way, almost, because, you know, Paul, you talked about flying EasyJet and having a very similar experience to BA. You know, that is not uncommon here in the States either. So I don't want to pretend like, you know, Delta is the gold standard and every other airline is shit, because that's not true. That's not really the way the airline industry works. That said, it's a better experience, you know, chiefly because absent, you know, a couple of hiccups over the last few years, which we've seen with every airline, you get to where you need to go on time. Delta's reliability is, you know, far and away better than, you know, every other airline except for Hawaiian, which, you know, being based in Honolulu, you don't really need to worry about weather all that much. They pad their schedules so much, so adding so much buffer, you know, in the flight time and in turnaround times, that they pack so much wiggle room into their schedules that even when things start to go wrong. I mean, I was on a Delta flight recently where we took off probably 75 minutes late and still landed on time.
Wow.
That's a choice that airlines make.
Yeah, but was that for a short haul? No.
Short haul.
What? They padded 75 minutes. Holy God.
And still landed on time. It might have been within the 15-minute buffer that, you know, the Department of Transportation says still qualifies as on time. But it was kind of astounding and just reminded me that that's a choice that some airlines make and others don't, because it's expensive to build that much time into your schedules to make sure that you can get people on the ground on time.
For a layover, I would say, sorry to interrupt, for a layover, that's very valuable, because you know you're going to actually grab the next, for a short layover, obviously, because many times, and especially building the trips post-COVID with all the mess that is happening and still happening, I'm building way more time than I used to, because I don't trust what they're telling me on the freaking website.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, that gives you so much confidence, especially if you're building in a layover before flying overseas, where, you know, if you're not booked on the same ticket, you know, you booked a BA flight and then, you know, something else separately. If your airline doesn't get you to where you need to go, you're not going overseas. You're just staying home.
Alex has one of those coming up. We'll see.
I have too many of those coming up. Unprotected layovers internationally. Yeah. You know.
You'll be fine.
I'll be fine, he says.
Worst case, you're stuck in Japan, which there can be.
I know. I'm like, worst places to be stuck.
Yeah. Just another trip to Lawson. It's fine.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. For the sandwich, for the egg sandwich. Absolutely. Have you flown their 221?
Yes.
Sorry, 220. 221 is the one they want to call the 500, which doesn't exist, guys. I'm going ahead in the podcast. We're going to talk about it in 3 years. The 220, have you flown it?
I have. Yeah, they have the 220-100 and then the 220-300, which currently is the stretch, slightly longer version. And it's great. I mean, the two-seat on the right side, I guess, as you're walking down, is so nice. It's so quiet. I mean, it's not an A380 quiet, but it's pretty darn close. Certainly a lot better than, you know, some of the regional jets that you're more likely to fly, especially with other airlines here in the States. There's more and more of them coming into the fleet. So, you know, a couple of years ago, you had to get really, really lucky to get on a 220. With Delta, and now, you know, depending on which hub you're flying from, you've got a pretty darn good shot, you know, maybe a coin flip at this point. And then, that lavatory at the back with the window, it shouldn't be important, but it's just the coolest thing.
No, that's a cool thing.
I agree. Yeah, you mentioned 2 seats in the. I'm like, yeah, we don't have that in Europe. We always have the same version as the economy, but they block you a seat or something, which is it's the only airline that has a 220, I think, in the US, right?
JetBlue has some 220s now.
Alex, you are certainly in the dark. Oh yeah, of course.
Man, they're getting complicated with their fleet.
Yeah,
let's get some Spirit into the mix, and really make things a mess.
Decouple an NEA. That'll be fun for them.
Oh, I forgot. With all that, you talked about the fact that the miles are being devalued, so let's just use them. At the same time, the price of flights keep increasing, which if they keep doing so, at some point they will probably level out. But if they keep doing so, it's also harder to get miles because it becomes too expensive to fly. So do you think, how do you see that? Do you see the price of flights keep increasing for another year or two before? And here we can also, maybe it's not putting aside the inflation of everything else. It's also putting the fact that fleets are not fully back in many airlines. They're still putting them back. At some point, there will have to be an inflection point when it happens. But like you said there's not enough capacity to Europe. Yes, of course, partially due to a lot of people wanting to travel at the same time because they've not been able for 3 years. But probably at some point, do you hope that they level out soon? Or do you forecast with your colleagues, you forecast this it will go on for another 2-3 years before they do? I'm not asking you for a forecast. It's not the right word. For just a thought, because I don't want to put you in the spot in 3 years like, you were wrong.
I think that's probably a question that airline CEOs are asking Boeing and Airbus. Because that's the piece that's really missing here, is that aircraft deliveries have slipped so much the last couple of years. And, development has been so delayed on a bunch of new programs, production flaws. I think there's a lot of moving pieces to get this supply and demand balance right, but that's a really, really big one. Especially here in the US, and I'm sure, overseas with you guys as well. These airlines have been on unprecedented hiring tears, and that is a challenge. Training is an even bigger challenge, especially when, you were furloughing 60-year-old employees and you're now trying to hire 20 and 25-year-olds to replace them. But that will, knock on wood, fingers crossed, get right over time. And then the question is, are there going to be the airframes to help those people meet that demand in order to right-size the capacity? And that I do not have a crystal ball on.
Yeah, you're right. Of course you're right. There's one topic you mentioned you wanted to touch upon a little bit, was the we have in Europe some protection for passengers, the famous EU, is it 261, Alex? I always forget.
Yep. Which
gives us some form of compensation. First of all, some direct, maybe vouchers or something if you're stuck on the ground, and also some form of compensation if you have, I think the threshold is like 3 hours late, Alex?
3 hours,
6 hours late or something. Yeah. And depending on the distance as well, right? That doesn't really exist in the US, as in it's the airline's willingness to help you or not, and especially to refund you or not, that matters, which often more than enough is written in the terms of the contracts. There has been some recent years, even before COVID, but there's always been some rumors about members of Congress wanting to push some legislation forward. Do you think it's going to happen? And do you think it's a good thing if it were to happen?
It should happen, I think. I think EU 261 is in some ways a bare minimum of setting in law what it means to do right by consumers. And that currently in law in the United States, what it means to do right by consumers is left almost entirely to airlines. And that also means that it's left up to frontline agents who are getting hounded by, probably almost 200 people to figure out if they can get a hotel voucher or a meal voucher. And there's no guaranteed compensation whatsoever for some of these problems after the fact. So I really hope something happens. Like you said, this conversation has been going on here for many years, if not decades. The last 2 years, I think, has been, I hope, a wake-up call for Americans that it is the Wild West here, and that they really have very few, if any, rights when things do go wrong. Most interesting thing to me is that President Biden here and his administration has said they're going to put forward rules. So skip Congress altogether and just put some of this stuff in law. We don't know what that looks like. The odds that that's going to happen anytime soon, if ever, are frankly pretty slim. It's just a big, big lift. But does the threat of that possibly happening force the airlines to shape up? That's not a long-term solution. But if the airlines feel like that's a possibility, that, when they delay passengers by 3+ hours, they're going to have to fork over $400 or whatever the numbers are, that creates a stronger incentive than currently exists, because there is no incentive other than protecting the airline's brand not to melt down. So there's been that piece of accountability missing beyond just kind of bare minimum consumer rights and protections. Missing accountability for when airlines screw up, they need to pay the price. And if that accountability is missing, they're just going to keep screwing up. I do hope something happens. I've written one op-ed in my life at thriftytraveler.com, and it's calling for exactly like this, something like this. We published it in December of 2021. And then a year later, nothing had changed, and Southwest was canceling tens of thousands of flights. So we published it again, and still nothing has changed. So, my hopes aren't super high, but I'm not giving up yet. I do think it's an important measure to not just do right by American travelers who are footing the bill when airlines screw up, but also just to rein in the airlines.
Alex, do you ever have to try to ask for compensation in the US? Ever happened to you?
I don't even think I've tried. I'm sure there have been instances where I was maybe had a reasonably strong case for something, but I think because of exactly what Kyle just said, I haven't even bothered. And it's, in here we have a framework that is a legal framework where, and the point about frontline staff is so important, because all they have to do is go to this website. Go to this website. Here's a piece of paper, explains your rights. And it's the same irrespective of airline or airport or destination. If you're coming in and out of the EU, you are bound by this law. And I don't have to negotiate with 200 people, and also negotiate with my supervisor about what I can offer when I've got 200 people yelling at me. So I don't envy them. For such American consumer protection law isn't actually that bad, but it's amazing for such a tightly regulated industry. The airline world has been able to get away with zero regulation or accountability on this front whatsoever, unless there's a major meltdown. Congress makes a lot of squawking noises for about a week to look good on TV, and then it's shelved again, as you say. So and of course, there's no incentive for the airlines to do it, because people like me who are delayed or go, that's too complicated, I'm just going to go deal with this over here.
Exactly.
It's a free market, man. It's a free market. And United just had their own version of a meltdown. You mentioned Southwest was a few months ago. I mean, United I think it's recovering by the time we're recording this.
Barely, yeah.
But still, it's just, yeah.
It's not good. Whether it's the scale of Southwest or the scale of United more recently, or the next one. I mean, I think the last 2 years have shown us all that these things are going to continue happening. And look, EU 261 hasn't fixed the airline industry in Europe, not by any measure, but hey, at least there is that card to hand out to passengers so they know exactly what they're entitled to. Versus here in the States, which is, if they could hand out a card, it would probably just say nothing. Or whatever that airline agent deigns to give you based upon the clearance that they've gotten from their supervisor.
All right.
After the Southwest meltdown, everybody got hauled in front of Congress during that period when, Congress was squawking and it was in the headlines. And whatever. And someone from the main airline lobbying group, Airlines for America, was on the witness stand. And I'm going to paraphrase very heavily here. So, listeners, you can feel free to email Paul and take it up with him, because I'm telling you now, I'm paraphrasing. But, she said that European style regulations would be a disaster. And she did use the word disaster, because it would kill cheap travel, which is what Americans want out of airlines. That second part is true. But, as so far as I'm concerned, and, I don't do a whole lot of flying over in Europe, but I do believe that there are some pretty decent fares over in Europe, and that in many ways that market has only increased since the introduction of EU 261.
100%. Yeah. Lack of competition is what robs the flying public of good fares, not regulation.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Lobbyists.
Exactly. We have Wizz Air, we have EasyJet, we have Ryanair, we have Vueling, there's so many. Every time Alex or I land at an airport and we talk about it, we always spot like this weird, and I'm like on Wikipedia, what's this airline? And there's like a new low cost. Not all of them survive, but competition. You can fly across Europe for 20 euros. I mean, it's just,
and they know that.
Crazy.
They know that it was a specious, spurious comment, and they know it.
They absolutely know it, but they know what resonates with people who want cheap airfare, which is, hey, nice cheap airfare you got there. Be a shame if something were to happen to it.
So let's talk about happier things. ORD. It's a very...
Oh, you had me going for a second there, Paul.
Of course, we'll do your home airport. But so when I asked Kyle which airport did you want to cover, of course, obviously, I thought it would be MSP because that's your home airport and you know it so well. So we want to hear your view about it. You said I could also talk about ORD. It seems that the airport is your enemy or something. So I haven't gone through ORD for a long while. You, Alex, have you been in recent?
A couple of years ago, yeah.
Did you like it, Alex?
No, I don't like that airport for lots of reasons, which I want Kyle to...
So, okay, let's go, the two of you. Kyle, why is it such a bad...
So I'm going to tell you two quick stories that just sum up my... Hatred is a strong word, but it's close for O'Hare. First is, and I need to point out, I do need to connect through O'Hare a lot because my home airport, Minneapolis, has some international flights, but nowhere near the connectivity that O'Hare does. And that just makes O'Hare, it's a 30-minute flight away. It's pretty simple. A couple of years ago, I was in O'Hare, about to fly to Japan. And there was a light rain outside, not a downpour, but a light rain. I'm walking through the terminal and I look up, and there is a light through which water is just pouring out like a budget version of the Jewel at Changi in Singapore. I mean, it's really just like Illinois was like, hey, what if we just poured water through this skylight? That would be kind of cool. It was like, how is this happening in one of the biggest airports in the United States when there's a light rain outside? So that one has always stuck with me. But the biggest one...
The only airport I remember that happening is in Manila, and that's a terminal that doesn't even exist anymore. Yeah,
for good reason.
Sorry, go ahead.
So the other one is exactly what we were talking about unprotected connections. My wife and I were flying to Madrid a couple of years ago through O'Hare, and we had an unprotected connection earlier that morning. But we gave ourselves like 6 hours. So we were going to be good. We were flying out first thing in the morning. Wake up at about 4 a.m. to see our flight into O'Hare has been canceled. And so we're trying to call American Airlines. We were flying there. Nothing we can do. No flights available. Everything until at least 2 p.m. into O'Hare has been canceled for the day due to weather in Chicago. So... we gave ourselves enough time, luckily, that we could rent a car, drive one way from Minneapolis to Chicago, which is about 6.5 hours, probably. I might be a little wrong about that.
Yeah, but still.
So you do what you got to do to make sure you don't miss your connection, because if we did, we would be screwed. So we make it to O'Hare to find just the the most beautiful February day I've ever seen in my life. 6.5 hours later. And it's just, O'Hare cannot handle weather at all. I mean, especially Minneapolis, we can get into it, but their snowplow and snow removal team is just absolutely world class. Minneapolis can get clobbered with snow, and flights will only be delayed by a little bit if they are at all. And, you know, Minneapolis gets so many diversions from O'Hare just because they cannot keep up. So to top things off, on this trip, as we're driving, we find out that my sister gave birth to our niece, her first child. So it's just the most emotional roller coaster of a day. And luckily, we made it in time. We made it in time to make it to the lounge and get inordinately drunk to celebrate our niece and make the flight to Madrid. And I tell myself, never again am I connecting through O'Hare, and I have to do it anyway. And it just bugs the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Alex?
I've had not as epic stories as that, but I just find that every time I go through that airport, I'm like, what is there's just so much disorganization and chaos. And I remember, like, last time I flew there, we were going to film, and we were flying on the downwind leg of our landing, and we kept going and going, like over the lake, and going and going and going and going and going, to the point where the captain came on and said, "We're not asleep up here. We know where we're going. We're just on the longest down we've ever experienced because we're in rush hour." And it added like nearly an hour to the flight time by the time we actually got on the ground.
No way.
Yeah, it was. And then there are other times where, you know, flights to Chicago, we've pushed back from wherever where I was going, like Miami or whatever, and just parked with one engine running because there may have been a cloud over Chicago at some point and they had to shut it down. But that airport, it's not just, the public transport infrastructure is great. The intra-terminal travel is hilarious. It's it's just not the BA lounge there is terrible. So yeah, but Chicago as a city is one of my favorite on earth. So, you know, you have to endure that welcome to and departure from Chicago to appreciate the city. But I would also try and avoid it.
Amen.
So MSP then. What about, have you been to MSP?
I have.
Alex?
Let's say no. I can't remember it.
Yeah, I should have checked before the show. I want to say yes, but I forgot to check. I think I've done a layover a long, long time ago. We're talking 10 plus
I think I may be in the same boat, but I might as well have not been there.
No, yeah, I do. I have Delta. It was still at the time when I was Platinum on SkyTeam through Air France and KLM. So Platinum was a thing for Air France. KLM was not Platinum SkyTeam. That thing doesn't exist. And I was the same mood I said earlier. I was trying to fly all airlines in the US that turned out great because I was flying Delta. Yes, I did a layover, but honestly, it's a long, long, long time ago. However, and I think I said that already when we covered it in another episode. I forgot which one it was. I have a good memory of it, which I cannot say about a lot of airports in the US. And I don't want to sound, because I know that all the Americans will say, "Oh, what the hell?" No, it's just that the philosophy of flying in the US means that usually airports in the US are more like a utility, less of something grandiose. I mean, there's exceptions. I mean, you know, the international terminal LAX is pretty cool. The upgrades, apparently they've made a LaGuardia, must be cool. I'm hoping that the upgrades at JFK, when they appear, will be cool. The TWA. So there are exceptions, but overall, the experience, also because they're public utilities, so there's not much shopping, whereas in Europe or in Asia, most of them are private, so there's an incentive to make you shop, which is why, for instance, in Heathrow, they won't tell you which gate you need to go to before half an hour before the flight, because they wanted to keep shopping, but that's one of their revenue, whereas US airport don't have that. So all that to say, a very long way to say that I enjoyed my small layover at MSP. I don't remember why, but I remember that I did. So tell us, I guess you like that airport.
I do. And look, you know, Minnesotans have, I don't know whether to call it a superiority complex or an inferior. It's probably some of the two. We think everything in Minnesota is the best thing ever, and we tell everybody about it in kind and sometimes not so kind ways. But I think it is a good airport, and it's important to point out it is not by any stretch the largest airport in the United States. I think it squeaks into the top 20 in terms of daily departures, but it's efficient. It's well designed. They keep really good care of it. So, this isn't the old LaGuardia Terminal B, which was horrible forever until the pandemic came. And all of a sudden it's nice again. They're constantly improving the airport. There's a good mix of the utility that you're talking about where it just works well. It's there. It's run by the government. But also they're adding nice art features and redoing bathrooms. It's just, it's hard to have a bad experience at the airport unless if it's the airline's fault, which you can't say about every airport in the country. You can have a lot of bad experiences in O'Hare and JFK and LAX. And yes, those are all much bigger airports, and the ability to move smoothly and do things well is easier with a smaller footprint. But man, the airport just does a lot of things right. And honestly, the biggest one that I hope people, especially my fellow Minnesotans, don't take for granted is that, when we can get 12 inches of snow in a day and most flights are still getting on and off the ground on time or close to it, that is a miracle.
That's amazing.
And that, like we've talked about with other things, that does not come cheap. That is a level of investment in snow removal that is absolutely unparalleled, which I have never sounded more Minnesotan in my entire life than bragging about snow removal, but it is cool. And it is so cool to watch that conga line of snowplows go up and down the runway to clear things every 30, 45 minutes as they need to, because it is something that you just do not see to the same level almost anywhere else.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That really is amazing, because it's not, I think, also just the investment in the infrastructure, it's the expertise as well and experience, and being able to do that and see when the writing is on the wall, and you're going to get dumped on that things just happen. I mean, you see it in the Nordics to an extent, because they have the exact same attitude that you do, and not just in the snow clearing prowess, which is very important, but also in the pride in their smaller airports. We do not have that here.
I thought you were about to say their arrogance.
Their arrogance, yeah. There's a connection, right, between the Nordics and Minnesota.
There sure is.
At least spiritually. So yeah, there you go. That's maybe you've inherited it from them, or they've been inspired by your pioneering spirit. But yeah, it's very impressive, because it was Fortress Northwest for the longest time, wasn't it?
It was, and Delta by default now. But yeah. No,
you just reject my memory.
Northwest?
I flew Northwest there, not Delta. I was like trying to figure out. Yeah, because I was a Northwest flyer mostly, not Delta flyer, because I was still based in Japan. And that was one of the best ways to go to, because I had these flights, to go to Guam, to go to Manila, and it was mostly Northwest. And then it became Delta. When was it? 2012 they merged or something?
It started in 2008, 2009, might have finished in 2010 or 11, somewhere in there.
That's what I meant. By the time I didn't see the Northwest livery, the menu, the color scheme, and everything. That's what I meant. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier Delta One that you're going to fly to. How is Delta One? Does it? Can you give us like a comparison to like another business class, first class, whatever you want to call it you've done? Is it a good? I know there's multiple ones, but the international long haul ones I'm talking. Is it a good experience?
If you get one of the newer planes, so an A350 or an A330-900 Neo, it is a good experience. I would say it's substantially better, at least in my limited experience, than any of the major U.S. carriers, and definitely some, if not many, of the major international ones. I mean, this is not Qatar Airways or Qatar, I'm sorry, as you call it, or Singapore or whatever else. Go down the list of the top five, but it's good. They're good seats. They're private. On those 350s and 330 Neos, they've got the suites with the closing doors, which is a little bit of a gimmick, but also quite nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah, don't you think as well? I'm happy that you say that because, I mean, everybody's doing a door nowadays. I've seen like 5 announcements in the past 4 weeks of doors and doors and doors. And I'm like, yeah, but really, I don't know if it changes anything because most of these seats anyway, the way the layout was played, you couldn't see anyone else anyway in the first place.
Yeah, it's the problem, I think, is that there's an impulse, it seems, to treat doors as, because it is buzzy and people seem to like it, it becomes lipstick on a pig. Or at the very least, it becomes a long-term solution that really is only going to work for a short while, because the ability to slap a door on an off-the-rack seat is something that's going to work for a while, but is going to inhibit actual innovation and doing something new and exciting.
And it's one more thing to break.
And one more thing to break, and they do break often.
Yeah.
Do they? I didn't. Oh yeah, actually, probably. Yeah. I'm not a big fan. So, which leads us to. We always ask to our guests to bring us 1, 2, 3. Could be only one. Could be 5 stories. But memorable flight. It can be like the worst flight in your life. It can be the best flight in your life, or you can be an emotional flight. It could be anything. Which flight do you want to share with us today?
So, about 5 years ago, my wife and I went on our honeymoon, and we went to Bali. And this was actually the first time that I ever flew international business class. So, full disclosure, the rose-colored glasses are on, and they are rose-colored because we flew EVA Air Royal Laurel business class from Chicago to Taipei. Yes, I had to go through O'Hare again. And as luck would have it, it was the Hello Kitty flight that EVA Air is famous for. And it was, I mean, on the one hand, it was just a phenomenal flight. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I messaged you about it and told you needed to fly EVA Air because it was so phenomenal. And Paul did fly it and said, you know what? Wasn't that great?
Yeah.
Which
it was not.
It happens. But
it was not the Hello Kitty plane.
That's where you went wrong. You didn't fly it. No. Again, I just want to be clear. I am not the world's biggest Hello Kitty fan. I did not seek this flight out. I was at peace with it going into it. We thought we were going to get product changed out of it, and we got there that day, and we went to the check-in desk, and she printed out our Hello Kitty boarding passes, and was like, "Well, I guess this is happening. All right." But there was the spectacle of it, of almost everything except for the toilet paper was Hello Kitty branded. I mean, the menu, the slippers, there's special painting hung on the bulkhead with Hello Kitty and her pals in it. They pour the nice rosé champagne. They do rosé for Hello. I mean, it's just over the top in the absolute best way possible. But it also struck a really important balance because it didn't, impede on an otherwise just a really, really nice flight. And, I will fully admit that I may be totally over the top in my love for this flight and for EVA as a whole, because it was our honeymoon and it was my first time flying international business class. So I'm excited to actually take not 1, but 2 Hello Kitty flights this summer as we go back to Bali for our 5th anniversary, because we're flying again to O'Hare. This is a recurring theme. To Taipei and then down to Bali, and both legs are now Hello Kitty flights because they brought that back earlier this summer. So I will get to try it again and figure out if I am just completely over the moon because of my own emotions and personal experience, or if it is really that good. But it was really that good. And honestly, when I think about it, the biggest thing is what I think we would probably all agree absolutely makes or breaks a flight, which is service. Mm-hmm. You can have
100%.
You can have a bad flight in the world's best business class or first class seat because the service isn't up to par. But you can have a great flight in a substandard fleet if the crew makes up for it. It's the biggest X factor. And in this case, it worked out for us in spades, and it just may not have worked out for you, Paul.
Maybe I was just unlucky. It's always hard to judge because when you go, I've only flew them once, right? So it's really hard to judge. But it's true that it's often, when you have such an experience, it's the beginning of a love affair.
Exactly.
I mean, for every kind of experience, for airlines, all my decisions, like I said, for instance, that I was flying mostly SkyTeam and I switched, it was because of such occurrences where I would fly occasionally something else, and I was like, come on, this is too good I need to stop flying. Plus, people know that as well. I'm not a huge fan of KLM. So, though I've heard that their new seats and stuff are getting much better. They go actually a lot. They go to Taipei. That's how I went to Taipei myself with KLM, which was, people will remember, the worst beef I ever had in my life. And that's horrible because it stays with me. And every time I see a flight with KLM on my searches, I'm like,
beef.
Yeah, that beef. You still can have the smell at the back of my throat. I'm like,
oh, no. No, but it is those things that stay with you, right? Like for me, it's actually one of the biggest things besides the Hello Kitty of it all. My wife is a cheesecake fanatic, and that was dessert after the meal, which was an amazing meal that on most airlines, when you depart at 12:30 a.m., it's rushed, feels really forced. It feels like they want you to get fed and put to bed, and the crew couldn't have been nicer. The food overall couldn't have been a whole lot better. And then to cap it off with what my wife said was one of the best cheesecakes she's ever eaten. It's like, wow, that is just one of those things where it takes thought and care to make that happen, especially on a flight like that.
Yeah,
absolutely. So did you engineer to fly Hello Kitty again, or are these flights that go every day? Is Hello Kitty anyway from ORD? You can answer honestly.
This is another happy accident. So we booked this flight, probably last October, I'm guessing. And then around about April of this year, EVA had suspended all of the Hello Kitty service and grounded the Hello Kitty branded planes for the entire pandemic. But around April, they announced that they were bringing it back. It was going to start flying from O'Hare to Taipei and back, and then from Taipei down to Denpasar and Bali. On a different jet, and it just so happened that we booked those flights on that day. So barring a schedule change or something, we are getting another 20 hours full of Hello Kitty.
Amazing.
That's amazing. However, it's Star Alliance, right?
It is, yes.
So to the beginning of our conversation, you were not forcing yourself to go on SkyTeam because you fly Delta.
No. And that's the thing, right? Is, we wanted to go where we wanted to go. And I personally and very selfishly wanted to test whether 5 years later is my love affair for EVA Air real, or was it just the product of my Hello Kitty tinted glasses that I had on at the time? So we'll find out in a couple of months.
Have you flown ever, Alan?
Not for a long, long time, when I was a teenager. So doesn't count.
Oh yeah, when you were living there.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I have no plans, but I want to go back to Taipei though.
I do too. Yeah. Well, you have to come back and tell us what that flight was like.
However, I'm interested in testing the other one. What's the name? China Airlines.
China Airlines, and that's a SkyTeam airline.
Oh, now that you said that, no, of course, I've lost all my Star Alliance anyway, so I don't have a beef in the game anyway. Though. Lufthansa keeps like reminding me, why are you not flying with us anymore? Why are you not flying?
Yeah, you can buy it. You can buy your status back.
Yeah, I could actually. I could even buy my gold status back, but I'm like,
forget it.
It makes no sense, man. That would be the epitome of the emotion, like buying a status.
No, thank you.
Just to say that I have it for one more year.
For how many thousands of dollars, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's I have a reduced price because I haven't been X years, but I don't even know what's the actual price. So what does reduced price mean? I've no idea. Zero idea. Any other flight you want to share with us? Any other experience? Of course, this one is
it's hard to beat.
The top I get, but is there any other flights that you want to share?
That's a tough one. I don't have a flight, but I do have a memory when you sent this to me that I've been thinking about a lot lately, and about, I think, why the destination and the experience should be so important, because this is one that's like, it was at this point 7-8 years ago, and I see it vividly in my mind of being in Vietnam for the first time and going to Bia Hoi fresh beer, which they sell for like 12 cents a glass. And, you know, in Hanoi, there's the big Bia Hoi corner, which is, you know, where a lot of the tourists go. And we went there too. But we decided one night, you know what, we're just going to find a random place on the west side of town and we're going to go there. We went there and very quickly started to regret our decision because there was not a lick of English anywhere on a menu or from the staff. And we're sitting there looking at the menu, and there's this guy that probably hasn't seen an American in years, if ever, just staring at us while chain smoking. And it became a little uncomfortable for a while until he just leans over with the cigarette in his mouth and taps at 2 things on the menu and just flashes a big thumbs up with a smile. So we're like, all right, this is what we're going to do. So the staff comes over, we, you know, hold up 2 fingers for 2 beers and then point at the 2 things, and the food comes out, and of course it's delicious. And there's the guy with another fresh cigarette in his mouth, looking at us with a huge smile on his face, and he kind of shrugs his shoulders with his thumbs up again. We give him the thumbs up back, and it was just, of all of the travel experiences I've ever had in my life, and I have been inordinately lucky to have a lot of them, that one is just, it's there constantly. Like, that is the standard of a travel experience for me now.
Love it.
We're both, Alex and I, you cannot see guys because we're not on camera, we're opining both because it's exactly what I seek all the time. In fact, it doesn't always happen, but that's why I get lost in cities. I want to find that.
Exactly. That level of connection where you don't need words, where people are just trying to help you. And then you connect after and make it clear that someone helped you. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's cool. What a great story.
Alex, what are your next flights? One, because I don't want to spoil it because there's...
Yeah, one. I'll give you one. I'm going to California on Monday with BA and my kids. So done that before. It's a bastard of a flight because it's about 10 and a bit hours and it's daylight, and you know, I'm in my 40s and I find that interminable, but for a 5-year-old, it is, might as well be days. So, but they're really good about it. So I am looking forward to it.
You'll have your Steam Deck anyway.
Yeah, but I won't get to use it because I will be corralling 3 bored children.
No, but they've
got their devices and their screens, and they're good travelers, so I'm not worried about that.
Exactly. Again, we won't say what are the other ones because it will be for you to discover the next. What about you, Kyle? Any upcoming flights you want to share?
Yeah, my wife and I...
ORD, obviously.
I'm just not even going to leave the airport. I'm just going to soak in the hatred and use it to fuel my hellfire and motivate me to never do it again, even though on this trip that we just talked about, I'm flying out of O'Hare and then back into O'Hare because I just hate myself. I think is the only explanation for that. No, my wife and I are flying into Boston shortly and doing a road trip up into the coast of Maine. So go up to Bar Harbor and Acadia National Park for just, you know, basically a long weekend, but really looking forward to that.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome. That's cool. As for me, very few flights. I mean, lots in the fall. What do I have? I have something in Europe, but I forgot. I think I'm going to Athens for sure, and I think I'm going maybe to Sofia in Bulgaria as well. And I have another one that just eludes me, and of course, when I will press stop, it will come back. But never mind, it doesn't really matter. The next episode was going to be all about Alex telling us about his No, Alex, you'll have to have a lot of water to talk for 2 hours straight because we want to hear all about it. Kyle as well. Who will be tuning in. And maybe finally, again, for those, because people are going to say, Paul, you never put any show notes. I will put your Twitter and a few things that you'll tell me in the show notes, but repeat for people who want to follow you or discover your writings, where to find it.
Yeah, you can find it every day at thriftytraveler.com. And then, you know, I post some stories and also say questionably mean things sometimes to mean people on Twitter at KPotterMN.
KPotterMN. I'll put it in the show notes. I promise you. If I don't, you're allowed to
say mean things.
Send me hate mail like I receive. I receive all the time because I always forget to put stuff in the show notes. I'll run the end music and we can talk over it. There you go. See? Yeah. And now I'm not in focus anymore. Man, that was great.
That was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for your time and your
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I hope that you're gonna give us updates once you've done these 2 Hello Kitty flights.
I very gladly will. Expect a diatribe in your inboxes at some point, in late September.
And you will again convince me to try EVA again. So this time I might actually convince. I think I need to go to the Hello Kitty flight. We should, Alex. No,
I think that's record an episode live from the Hello Kitty flight. That would be.
Yeah, we need pink microphones. Alex, go on Amazon, pink microphones. Anyway, everyone, happy flying.
Safe travels, guys.
Safe travels.